Hi guys. So let's talk about characters finally. This is the huge topic and we will cover it in several lessons. For the starters, I want to remind you that we were going to build the characters the way we build our world, and we'll construct it. How? Again, by aligning it to our plot and our theme. So basically, the first thing I want you to have in mind that we're going to construct the characters so they fit the needs of our story. You're going to come up with some really nice characters and you'll have to find them a role. And this role will have to be supporting the story, contributing to the story. And quite often, when we are trying to fit a character in a story, we sort of like the character just like we preferred our plot to our theme. And it's going to happen that when you were writing about plot, some characters were popping up. So it's seemingly unbreakable chain, but we don't want some weaklings in there. So yeah, I want you to focus on how your characters are fitting, how are they serving the plot. But before we start constructing them, I want to discuss some roles because they're typically considered very clear and clean, but there are also different theories and different ways to come about it. So this is not the ultimate, the only way to overview the characters and their roles. But I want to propose something that will be very practical, of practical use to you, which is thinking about some sort of archetypal roles. And you're probably familiar with because you've been reading TV tropes a lot, I think, and you've kind of felt that there are, that there's a big difference between some tropical character and really a good, well-made archetype. So yeah, the main leg, the first part of this is talking about good guys, our guys, especially because traditionally it's been like a hero and a villain, some sort of first line of separation of characters. But in fact, villains are bad guys and they can also be protagonists. Oops, protagonists. What's a protagonist? Is it the main character? Oh, there's a main character too. So yeah, main characters, protagonists, and heroes, three different things. Main character is the one who's the agent of the story, through whom audience experiences the story. Protagonist is the mover of the plot. He's the one that plot revolves around. And only when protagonist and main character are the same person, then it's a hero. So, and yeah, there's no moral distinction here. Protagonist or main character, they can also be evil or bad or whatever, and yeah, sometimes it's called anti-hero, or there can also be pure villains, as main characters of the story. But the point is, you have to think of these as functions and concepts, because especially is important for games, because you can make it so that your game is actually being told through someone else than the protagonists. For example, you can have a heroic brother or some, guy who's just oblivious and rushing into danger, and the player is in the role of main character who actually needs to prevent protagonist from getting stopped by antagonists. So in literature and movies, this sort of distinction is really sophisticated and rarely ever exploited. But in games, it can be really, really interesting to have, someone whose story it is, and then the player is actually even a support character, maybe not even the main character. But yeah, because player has some influence over the course of the story, then he would be the main character, because we experience the story through his eyes. And so just on the other side, bad guys, the other kind of guys, they are not really about good and evil, because just like we had hero, which is combination of protagonist and the main character, we have antagonist and the influence character. So antagonist is one actively working something that prevents hero or main character or protagonist. But not to confuse you, I'll say antagonist is against protagonist. So antagonist is someone or something which is standing in the way of protagonist. It can be someone actively trying to stop protagonist, or it can be some evil, or bad thing that a protagonist has to fight against. But it's connected to the plot again. So it's a plot-based thing. An influence character is someone who's representing different belief system, opposing belief system, someone who's not necessarily influencing the plot, but who's there to sort of be on the other side of the whatever belief or ethnical or moral system our main guy represents. And again, it's neither is a villain, because villain simply means evil dude, evil guy, evil something. Antagonists and influence don't carry moral implications. Yes, antagonist can be villain, influence can also be villain, but we're talking about roles of the story, in the structure of the story. There are many roles that participate in the story. For example, a guardian and contagionist. So, guardian is someone who's a teacher, moral compass, follow in this sense a big influence on the protagonist to keep straight. He's either a teacher or mentor or guide or consciousness of the protagonist, and he can or they can play major minor roles, but they're also again connected to the plot itself, because you'll see we have support characters and they're not really the same. Like Guardian is not the support character. Guardian participates actively in the plot. Contagionist is the one who opposes and delays the main character or the protagonist, who stands in the way. He's not necessarily connected to a villain. He can be a bad influence, some friend who just pulls the protagonist away or main character away. So yeah. Then we have sidekick and skeptic. Sidekick being the faithful follower, always believing, always supporting no matter what. And we have skeptics, those who are the opportunists of the group or who are not, willing to offer their help for free, this kind of, doubtful guys. We also have reason and emotion characters, reason character who's there to be cool and calm and composed, someone to, remind the others what's sane thing to do. And emotional characters are the opposite, they feel, they're passionate, they're violent, they operate in bursts, so they represent this other side of the story. And yeah, these roles combine into groups, and we will have the drivers of the plot and the passengers of the plot. Drivers of the plot are those who actively pursue the plot. So we're not talking about evil or good, we're talking about roles that move the plot forward. The passengers, they are there to support the driver group, and therefore they're very important, especially because, it will come naturally to you to set these driving roles connected to your theme and plot. If you think of the story, you think of the main character, protagonist, hero, whatever, when you think of the story, like, it will be about this guy and he will do this and that. But these support characters have to be very carefully built. So the driving group is antagonist and protagonist, guardian and contagionist. These are four members of this plot driving group. And passengers are sidekick or skeptic, reason and emotion characters. And it's best explained through, of course, Star Wars. For example, in Star Wars, a protagonist is Luke Skywalker. He's the one who we start with the plot moves along with his journey. So he's actively working, against the antagonist, and the antagonist, interestingly enough, is an entity, not a character. So that's why we started with the building entities. So yeah, Galactic Empire is the antagonist actually, because they are actively doing the bad stuff in the space that Luke is opposing to. Why is not another entity a protagonist? Because this is not a story about Rebel Alliance. This is a story about Luke Skywalker, So, well, just like theme and plot, it's about this guy and his journey that represent the theme and the plot of the story. He's the one who gets his arms cut off and being replaced with mechanical one, in alignment with theme of nature versus technology and so on. His guardian is obviously Obi-Wan Kenobi, who's teaching him and pulling him in this world of Jedi's and whatnot. And Contagionist is Darth Vader. That's why Darth Vader later can become, redeemed as in the final final round of the oldest, I should say, trilogy. So yeah, he's not he's in league with the antagonist, but he's not the antagonist himself. He's Contagionist. He's actively trying to stop the character, convert him to their side. He's representing the other part of the coin. He's like evil Jedi to this good Jedi guy. He sort of champions the cause of the antagonist. So he's not antagonist himself, because he's not ruler of this evil galactic empire. He's just serving them. Then we have the passenger group in the Star Wars cast. We have sidekicks, C-3PO and R2-D2, who are always totally loyal to Luke and always supporting him, and they're always there witnessing his adventures. And we have a skeptic, which is Han Solo. Because he doesn't want to join the rebellion. He's leaving at some point and then returning, and he always doubts this Jedi ways. He relies on good old blaster thing. As for reason and emotion character, a reason character is Leia, who's calm, composed, tough together. She thinks, and emotion character is of course Chewbacca, who's like it's obvious. He's passionate. He loves them, cares for them, protects them, and he represents this and he's also in connection with this theme of nature. He's good guy and full of emotions. So I've added the guide to these archetypes, because each of these characters has the action side of them and the decision side of them. So for example, the protagonist has action characteristic, which is pursuing the goal, the driving of the story, forcing the action, and he's also having this decision part of him when he urges the other characters to go on, so to recruit them, to move with them. And the opposite with the antagonist. They not only in action sense work actively to prevent hero or to fulfill some agenda. They also try to persuade the others to give up or to join their side. Also like guardian, helper who aids the efforts. For example, in the first movie of Star Wars, he's shutting down the tractor beam, and also his decision side of he's like a consciousness. He's representing the view to morality. So yeah, they have this both action and decision sort of sides. So yeah, it's there and laid out for you, and we'll build them in detail later, because this is really long and huge process. For starters, I want you to identify your characters. Yes, some of you don't have any characters ready, like I think Raul has just the idea of this main character, protagonist mage, and then someone he lost, and he has this big enemy, and he needs to decide whether the enemy is, for example, the evil Chamberlain who guides the cult, or the cult itself. Also, for Mjolnir, we also have some idea what the main character or protagonist could be, and probably the entity will again be the antagonist, but maybe not. I don't know. I have no idea where he's going with his story. Ricardo has very interesting situation because he already knows quite a lot of his characters and who they are and what they are, and they are displayed, and we saw that they're sort of morally ambiguous in the sense that they're not good, they're not evil, they just have some goals and agendas they're trying to pursue, and the personality sort of determines where they lie. So I think it will be very interesting to see if he can identify who his antagonist is, who his protagonist is, who his influence character is, so who's who in this structure. So I would like you to invent your characters if you don't have them, and if you do have them, to sort of try to see where they fit. Who are the driver squad in your story? Who are the antagonist, protagonist, guardian, and contagionist? Is there a character who doubles? You know, sometimes a protagonist is also a guardian. Rare, I cannot imagine an example, but sometimes contagionist is not the bad guy. Sometimes, you know, guardian can be in league with the antagonist as some sort of traitor who tries to, you know, first guide the character, and then yeah, there was I think evil guardian can be viewed. There was some story of Star Wars in extended universe where there's some evil creature who's working with the Emperor, and she's actually teaching one of the Skywalkers, and it looks like they're really evil, but it turns out that they were actually a guardian who prepared this Skywalker Jedi to, you know, return as someone capable of destroying the bad guys. I think it's this horrible Yuuzhan Vong section of this extended universe. Anyway, so yeah, don't think of the bad guys. Think of the roles, like who's antagonist, who's protagonist, who's guardian, who's contagionist, and passengers. Who is your story, if there are any sidekicks and skeptics, reasons and emotions, and also consider this. These characters don't have to be human. You know, we see R2-D2 being robots, or those can be animals, those can be entities. So think through who fits this bill of roles, and that's your homework for Tuesday, to come up with the drivers and passengers of your story, so to find who fits these roles. And if you don't have them, don't develop them in detail like we did with entities. Just, you know, if you don't have idea who's your who's going to be your sidekick, never mind, just write down some notes. For example, like, okay, my sidekick will be someone from the family of the protagonist, or my skeptic will be, I don't know, his girlfriend, or, you know. So if you don't have developed characters, you don't have to fit these bills now, but think about the role of these characters and align them with your plot and your theme. Like, if the story theme of the story is depression, contagionist will probably advocate, you know, letting go and not doing anything. Skeptic as well. It can be a chance where skeptic is a contagionist. Maybe he's in the group of this mage, and, you know, he's not bad guy. He just works actively towards preventing the mage for doing anything because he doesn't believe in action. You know. So yeah, don't develop them in detail yet. You can come up with names, that's natural, but don't go into details. You know, just identify who your characters could be, thinking in sense of these roles. It's like, that's why I ask you to make the plot outline, because you have to know where your story is headed. And if you didn't do this homework yet, do return to your world building and to your plot and to your theme if need be, so you can align these newly invented characters to your plot and theme. So, for example, if you don't know where the story is headed, try to make an effort and make an outline of the plot, like what's going to happen, what kind of situations are going to be presented, because you will need to find characters that fit this plot. For example, if in Mjomir's story he wants to keep it in the corporate structure, so less shooting, fighting kind of story, but more like, intrigues. So he according to the plot and what's going to happen, he can really plant some. This character is going to be a reason. Doesn't necessarily have to be helper of the protagonist, but maybe there's some in this evil corporation. Maybe there can be some good guy manager who's keeping the tight ship and his voice of reason, and maybe there can be a good guy contagionist also, who's trying to tell to the main character, keep don't disturb the things, let it be, it's such is life. Don't try to change. So yeah. You can always already see, according to your idea, your team and plot, what kind of characters they could be. You don't have to flesh them out. You don't have to invent what they are in your story, but do come up with some sort of roles according to these drivers and passengers thing. And again, as always, you can let me know how is it progressing, how is it working for you. Do you need additional explanations? Because this system of archetypal roles, it goes really crazy. Next time I'll try to present you with like more ways to combine the motives and elements of these characters. But there's like 32 of them, so combined in any way you want. So yeah, this is really not about trying to find the stereotype, but to find what roles your story will have. Maybe your story doesn't have a character of reason. Maybe your story doesn't have character of emotion. Maybe your story will not have any sidekicks and skeptics. But be prepared to know what these roles are. So if they do arise, that you will know how to handle them. So yeah, think through. See if your plot team needs these kind of characters. You'll surely need antagonist and protagonist, maybe guardian and contagionist as well. So yeah, let's first lay them out. And then we'll develop them further. See you on Tuesday.